Hello and welcome. I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet, and today I'm going to talk about a topic that I was kind of avoiding a little bit. I was considering making a video about this last week, but wanted to think about it a bit further to try and come to some sort of concrete stance, something a bit punchier and a bit more like concrete, essentially. To use the word twice, but I didn't. But I still feel like I need to talk about it. So today we're going to talk about, is there just too much product? Now, the too much product, perpetual hype, ongoing spoiler season, product after product being released to us thing is a bit of a meme now. Often these things, these jokes take on a life of their own within our community and in our content, and I am also sometimes to blame for that too. I often shout perpetual hype at the beginning of videos talking about spoiler seasons, and I won't stop because that bit is almost like completely true. There's no real disputing it. Just as an example here, Strixhaven released on MTG Arena on the 15th of April and a bit later in paper. Previews began on the May 20th through the 1st of June for Modern Horizons 2. So there was a period where a set released and we came up to the previews for Modern Horizons 2 where we had almost over a month of no previews or anything. We did have some secret lair announcements in that time that I haven't written on my notes, but that was nice. From Strixhaven to Modern Horizons, there was a bit of a gap. Modern Horizons 2 released on June 3rd on Modo, and then paper on the 18th. And then, on June 24th, just 6 days later, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms previews began with early ones, and then continued fully another 5 days later, from the 29th through to the 5th. Then we had Modo and Arena releases of AFR, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, on the July the 8th, and then July 23rd for paper, although of course half the world still can't really play because of pandemics and such, or the events just aren't firing. 3 days later, after the paper release on the 26th, a new set was announced with Jumpstart Historic Horizons. Those previews continued through to August 3rd, and then 2 days later on August 5th, Innistrad cards were spoiled in a blog post on Weekly MTG. So basically, what I'm getting at by reiterating all these dates to you is that essentially there's no debating, there's no arguing the fact that things are very, very regular. In the last 4 months, we've had a 32-day space as the longest day, or 31 days, or whatever it was, between Strixhaven releasing and the Modern Horizons 2 previews starting. So there's no debating that it's regular, like very regular, consistent, borderline, perpetual. So I'm just going to assume that that is something that everyone can just say, yeah, that's a thing now. Especially when we add secret layers into that, where it really does become a literal constant barrage of new things. But what we've got to step back and think about is that, because that's a given, that's an observation. It's not a value judgment. It's not a criticism as such in and of itself. We then need to ask, is this a problem? Like, really? I know we all joke and meme about it, and it can lead to fatigue and stuff if you're completely into Magic, but honestly, is this really a problem for the majority of people playing Magic the Gathering? There is this talk of how Magic has always been a lifetime hobby, something that you get into for a long time and you devote a lot of time and effort to. There is a culture around traveling to events, going to your local game store, becoming part of local communities and online communities around the game. And I think this is a positive for the most part, but I am also biased because I make content about the game. I've been part of those communities for almost a decade, maybe longer now, and I've got those communities built around me now too, with my Discord being the primary sort of subculture within it, although we have offshoots to other games and other products too, but it's Magic, right? The mutual language between us is Magic the Gathering. So when you are proverbially balls deep in a hobby like Magic, it's very easy to feel so enfranchised that every new release should matter to you. But I guess the argument is that that is just not a sustainable way of engaging with this hobby, this culture, this community anymore, because the number of products, maybe not the number of sets, because it might be roughly speaking the same number we've always had, but the number of products, whether that be how those sets are divided with their different booster products and sealed decks and commander decks and stuff like that, but all the supplemental editions, the secret layers, that sort of stuff as well. The number of products and things to keep up with, the news, the information is so regular. it is easy to burn out on that sort of thing. I should know, I felt this on several occasions over the last couple of years, and it's only getting worse as we're bombarded with more and more stuff. And I'm not complaining too much. To be able to turn my camera on, or turn on my computer and play with new cards in gameplay videos, or talk about new stuff with you, my audience, is great. And I love that, and I still love Magic. But it can be very tiring to keep up, because it's easy to forget things. The cognitive load of new set, new card, new art, new printing, new legality, new bans, just the constant shifts and changes is very hard to keep up with. And even if you can keep up with the cutting edge, it makes it very easy to forget things that happened only 6 months ago. So there is this argument that, like, being up to date with everything is just not the way to be, and not every set is for everyone, is a refrain we've heard in the past from Wizards and people at Wizards. So maybe, just maybe, culturally, we can shift away from having to know about everything or pay attention to everything. And for the record, I don't even know if that is correct. I'm not sitting here and preaching. I'm not saying that you are wrong for wanting to be as deep into, like, your favourite game as you are. I'm just saying that this might be something we are forced to do, as this relentless march of content and product just never stops, never ceases. Probably, if anything, speeds up. Because don't forget, they're going to sell more and more product if it just keeps selling. There's no reason for them to pace out and pad out the standard releases or even the supplementary releases or whatever if it just flies off shelves and sells like hotcakes anyway. There is no incentive there. They don't really care, and this is not my criticism of people at Wizards per se, but more as a company, entity, corporate, business, capitalism is bad and all that shit, but they don't give a fuck if the enfranchised people get burnt out, if they can retain a constant flow of new players, and players who will still just buy the product off the shelves, like the casual and the kitchen table, who are supposedly the vast majority of Magic players, if you listen to Wizards. And there was a time when not having to care about everything kind of was the case anyway. Like, it used to be that when a standard set came out, I wouldn't play any standard. I would draft it once or twice as a deeply enfranchised player of Magic who played regularly, like once a week minimum, regularly online, talked about it online. That's how I got into making this content, right? I'd draft every set once or twice, and then probably forget about it once I stopped playing standard, unless there's a couple of cards that start to make impacts on the decks that I like or the decks I was playing against in Modern or Legacy, and I'll pick up some stuff for Commander. The difference is that with the creep in power level, that's not really a thing anymore either, where every time a new set is released, Modern and Legacy and even Vintage, and Commander of course as well, is attached to all these as the non-rotating formats, it's just pandemonium. They are just upshifted and warped to be almost unrecognisable at regular integers now. It used to be every set had a couple of cards, and now things are just fucking wild. The amount of bans are just testament to that. Again, it's very hard to debate against that fact. Whether that's a good or a bad thing is a subjective thing and worthy of discussion. I'm not again taking a hard stance on it. Like, the evolving changes is fun for content to keep things fresh, but it also, again, becomes tiring, and it also damages that ability to keep a deck and play it 6 months down the line in that format with some changes and things. And you might be slightly out of date. Now you can be so far out of date and so far out of meta for Modern or Legacy or Vintage or whatever. It's crazy how fast things are moving because the power creep is so high. And with me playing a lot of Warhammer lately and getting into Warhammer as a big other hobby that I really love, and I've been doing videos and content on it as well, so if you like Warhammer 40k, if you thought about getting into Warhammer 40k, you should check out my Warhammer videos. But because of that, I've been comparing Magic to 40k in many ways, and there are ways that Magic and 40k are better than each other. Magic is still probably my favourite game of all time, but there are ways that they both, they could learn from one another in many ways. And I've done videos on this too. 5 ways each one is better than the other. Clickbaity titles like you'd expect, right? It's YouTube, you gotta be provocative. But one of the things that I did observe in the last few months, the last year let's say, is that Games Workshop has the exact same problem of releasing so much fucking stuff. Like, every single week there is new stuff on Warhammer Community Game previewed, they go into pre-order, then it's released, but there is a clear difference between that and Magic, in that a book comes out with new models for your army, And then that's kind of it. If you only collect one army or two armies, you can ignore most of the other releases. You might need to understand them a little bit if a mate of yours plays them, or if you're going to tournaments and stuff, that's a much higher enfranchised level. And you might need to understand them a tiny bit so that you don't get like blown out by them the first time you go to a game sort of play against someone or whatever. But ultimately, you can kind of ignore all the other books. So this weekend is 2 armies, Thousand Suns and Grey Knights coming out. You can just fucking ignore them if you aren't playing them. Where with Magic, every set has new cards. Every set now, well, it didn't used to be this way, will upturn the eternal formats, like, dramatically. So you don't get that respite. You don't see a set and be like, that's not for me, that's not going to have... Well, I guess the argument could be if you've got a casual Elves deck, or you only play Elves in Legacy and Commander, and the next set has 0 Elves in it, maybe you can ignore it, but it's unlikely, right? Well, I say this, of course you can fucking ignore it. This is all optional shit anyway, right? Like, none of this is a necessity. I know there's going to be some pedantic little twats in the comments who's going to be like, well, actually, Vince, none of this is needed. Like, I get that, you fucking idiot. Like, that's so fucking obvious it doesn't need to be said. But we're talking about keeping up with a hobby that you enjoy. But further to this, when I was thinking about, like, you know, can you ignore products? Well, for the most part, yes, right? Like, if you're a standard player, Modern Horizons matters to you fucking 0. And if you're a paper-only player, Jumpstart Historic Horizons having digital-only cards, if you didn't know it has digitally-only cards, in it, then you don't have to pay attention to it, right? And that's good. That separation is good. That allows you to do this thing that I'm wondering if this is the healthy way to do it, is to pick and choose your battles in terms of understanding and keeping up with Magic. But the problem comes in the fact that Magic is changing fundamentally as a game. And I'll do a whole video talking through this in more detail. But one of the biggest changes is that Magic is basically becoming Commander. And again, this is not me saying that as a value judgment. Saying that Magic is becoming Commander predominantly, or focused in that way, is not me saying that's a bad thing. Okay? So just keep that in mind when I say it. I'm not saying that as a, I'm fucking angry. But I am saying it in a statement that I think is very hard to debate against. If it weren't for Arena existing, I would be under the impression that 1v1 Magic is not long for this world. Or at least supported by Wizards anyway. If we look at it currently, there is no organised play planned by Wizards of the Coast. Now, if you've watched the latest episode of Dice Removal, if this video for some reason comes out a day or two later, I might hold it, and you might have seen the new episode of Dice Removal. I might be covering some bits that I've talked about with the professor, so I'm sorry if you hear me repeat myself at this point, but we have no GPs. We have no professional circuit anymore. We have no Pro Tour. We have no ways to qualify for Pro Tours. Nothing feeding to GPs either. So the incentivization to travel to a store a little bit further out and play in an event without, especially if the prizes aren't great, it's just not there, right? Like, why grind? Why keep up with a metagame? Why update your decks if there's just nowhere to go with it? And this is completely gone at the moment. And it's not to say it won't come back, but at the moment, during a global pandemic, they have axed it and cut it. And as we come out not the back end of the pandemic, but as we come into the latter part of the pandemic, where people are vaccinated and places are opening back up, other companies in similar boats to Wizards of the Coast have started to roll up into physical events and create tournament scenes, or encourage people just to travel to get together and to play the game. Both the creators of Flesh and Blood, whose name I did not write down on my notes, and Games Workshop, the creators of Warhammer, both of those companies are holding events. Flesh and Blood have got several events, big events, in partnership with CFB, and they've got like people going out to them in like Vegas and stuff this year. That's happening. And Games Workshop are holding 3 big tournaments, big GTs across America as part of their tournament circuit stuff. Meanwhile, Wizards of the Coast are radio silent on the future of paper support. So all of that, in a nutshell, leads me to think that paper Magic is predominantly going to be Commander, because Commander sells. And 1v1 Magic will be primarily on Arena. And that is sad to me, but that's the opinion part, that's the subjective part. I don't like the idea that that's the way we're going, but that can be unpacked in a whole other video. The reason I bring this up, though, is that it means that if it is all Commander all the time, which is a non-rotating format, and that is the focus of Magic now, and you can see it with just how many legendaries are in every set, right? And it's funny to see Jumpstart Historic Horizons, a set for MTG Arena that isn't for Commander, having borderline maybe no new legendaries barring the Planeswalkers. It's kind of funny because that's obviously not going to be filtering into Commander. So Commander is a focus. It might be the focus. So that then means that every set then becomes something that you should pay attention to in some capacity. It removes that thing of, I only play Modern, so I don't care about Legacy Horizons when that arrives, or the reprints of Eternal Masters or whatever. Or I just play Standard, so I don't care about Modern Horizons or the Timespire Remastered boxes. That's all out the fucking window again, because everyone's playing Commander, and Commander is now a format that is driving the price of cards probably harder than any other format has done in the past or will do in the future. So it kind of breaks down that possibility too. So ultimately, I don't know where I land on it. I have to acknowledge the fact that there is just so much fucking product coming out all the time. And I'm okay with that as a creator. As a creator, it gives me things to talk about. It makes my job fresh and interesting. I don't wake up in the morning and worry there's nothing to talk about in Magic. So I can't complain about that. But the fatigue that I see, both in myself as a player and in my audience and my community, like the amount of deeply enfranchised players that have been turned off of Magic in recent time that I see because of the decisions of Wizards, whether that be the fucking of organised play, the gutting of organised play, and then the complete nuking of organised play, or that be the power creep and the necessity of bans and the upending of every Eternal format every 5 seconds with new cards that just should never have made it through playtesting. There's so many reasons for it. And then on top of that, it's keeping up with the Joneses. Is that even a term I can use here? Does that make sense? Keep up with the Joneses, keep up with you. Well, you would. If someone else has more enfranchised and knows what's going on, they're going to have an advantage over you, right? So, yeah. Having to keep up with Magic is difficult and tiring in many ways. So that's the bit I don't like. Is seeing the community that I've been part of, like I said, for must be over 10 years now that I've been regularly playing Magic. I got a memory on Facebook today saying that 7 years ago, I won my first game day. My only game day. I actually stopped playing game days shortly after. Stopped playing Standard in general. It was Magic 2015 set, so maybe I was on Abzan Reanimator. Maybe I was on some sort of control deck after that, shortly after that. Maybe it was on Burial Rites and Great Hoof. Anyway, that was like the peak of me playing in my local area, going to stores and stuff and playing game days and F&Ms and little stuff. And obviously just travelled out to GPs. And I don't know why that tangent came up, but my point is, I think the fatigue and the burnout and the shifts and the changes in Magic are going to change the landscape. I don't know if it's for better or for worse. I'm not trying to be too doom and gloom here, by the way. Like I said, a lot of the things I'm saying is just like, let's look at the objective facts and then try and unpack how I feel. And even after starting to get these thoughts and think about doing this kind of video last Tuesday, I think was my first thought of it, I'm still not sure where I sit. So I want to write some notes, turn on my camera, ramble for close to 20 minutes, and then I'm going to throw it to you. So I want to hear what you think about the ongoing unstoppable hype train, the Perpetual hype. Do you think people overblow the joke and that it's just normal to have this much content? Do you think it's realistic to have this much content and product? Do you think they should put their foot off the gas, especially during the pandemic? People are not able to go to their games or play with the cards they opened 5 minutes ago, let alone the stuff that's just coming out. Or do you think that it's all fine and people are too easily upset by this sort of stuff and need to step back and to look at themselves and just look what I'm saying? A cultural shift within all of us, the enfranchised players and the grinders and stuff, and think, do we need to give a shit about every set? Do we need to care what's in the Commander product? It's hard to say. So yeah, there you go. That's my least definitive talk to camera video I've ever done, because I still don't know where I stand on it. But I wanted to get my feelings and thoughts out there because I've got a platform and that's kind of what I can do. That's not a good reason to just spout shit into the air, is it? But I'm hoping this will evoke some sort of conversation with you and your friends. I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I hope you've at least enjoyed this video or found something of interest in it. There'll be more dice to removal this week. I might have actually come out yesterday. So if you haven't seen the latest dice to removal, you can check it out yesterday if this comes out later in the week. I've got a tier list. We're going to have gameplay. We're going to have Warhammer Wednesday, all that good shit. So like, comment, let me know what you think. Subscribe, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.